Holy Galloway's Tusk, the patch that just went live for pretty much Avowed is huge. Also, Eric, the community manager for Obsidian, has this to say. They want to thank for support and the feedback suggestions. They are going to be bringing out a roadmap in the near future, expanding and showing more about what they're going to be planning for Avowed for, I guess, the rest of the year. And you know what? That's great to hear. There were some murmurings that whether or not this game had sold enough for all the usual hate baiters trying to put a downer on the game, suggesting that the game would just be done. That's it. Maybe had slightly troubled development, got it out the door, but no, it does look like they are going to enhance and do more and add some of the things that I think and some of you guys, fans of Avowed, I'm sure are asking for. I've literally just completed Avowed, which is kind of crazy, but I do have other channels to run and other games to cover. I did get my review copy a few days later than everyone else. I'd had planned to do all my guides by now, but I've still got a few that I want to finish off. And I definitely want to do a full update now, more or less talking about the stuff I want to see improved in the future. But yeah, 82 hours, pretty much every kind of side quest going. You'll have seen on my guides for weapons and locations and stuff, I literally have done everything you pretty much can do in Avowed. So I think that's a pretty good haul for gaming time. Anywho, what I would expect to see, hopefully, is the things most requested, like a photo mode. They know about it, they know that people want that. Some sort of new game plus, maybe even a change to the ending so that you could carry on your adventures. It really does feel like there is a way to make that achievable. I don't think the ending necessarily needed to be bookended where you couldn't necessarily go and explore more of the world. But either way, a new game plus, something similar that they did with their previous game Grounded, which didn't actually come at the end of the game. Instead, it was like a side option that you can activate just before you basically trigger the final cutscene of the game. So that's just a suggestion if they're going to watch that. But anyway, let's go through some of the stuff that has been improved or added right now. New talent points at levels 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 and 30. And don't worry, if you've already got to them stages, you're going to get the extra points added to your save. High contrast documents. New option increases the font size and applies bold stylings to all documents, tutorials, in-game pop-ups and a Ledger's Quest tab. The walk toggle. Players using mouse and keyboard can now toggle between walking and running. HUD customization. Toggle keybind. A new keybind default / hides all HUD elements for cleaner screenshots. Hallelujah. HUD opacity slider. Adjust the transparency of your HUD to your preference. Camera and compass options. Third person FOV slider added to graphic settings. And a static compass option. Players can now lock the compass to always point north instead of rotating. Controller and input improvements. They've got full support for customizing controller keybinds. Praise the Lord. A bunch of stability fixes which won't necessarily go through, but definitely I've noticed a few. In fact, I was kind of pissed off because at the ending of the game, just about to watch the credits and the game crashed. Doesn't say anything about that right here, but yeah, hopefully it will be a little bit easier now. Quest and dialogue fixes. The quest available icon for Ranger Verano no longer appears after the quest becomes inaccessible. The Finer Things in Battle quest now triggers reliably and will retroactively complete for players who already met its requirements. Attacking the Zurips in Denegan's cabin before the Find Her cabin objective now properly progresses the quest. Add Dreams Divider still. Combat at the Mount Forger now consistently ends to advance the quest. Dawn Treader quest fix. Now properly turn Inable to Offric even if Kai and Marius are not in the party. Elder Offerings quest fix now properly resolves if the player both paid for the stolen food and returned it. Boundaries of Antiquity quest fix prevented an issue where players could skip a required conversation. And an untimely end, Yugwolf and rebels no longer become hostile after sparing him. NPC conversation adjustments. The fixed Adolero and opponents failing to appear if Dream Files were killed before starting a side quest. Amelia will now always give you the key to her camp's chest when speaking with her. I did notice that. That was something I ended up chatting and then I still ended up having to go and yeah, just basically kill them all to get the key. Constable Hajima now correctly rewards players for bounties even if Hearts of Valor isn't completed. Marius' training offer. His training offer is now more accessible in conversations. I didn't get it. In 82 hours, Marius did not want to teach me a thing. Mainly probably because I was cussing him out for being such a miserable son of a bitch. Conversations will no longer drop unexpectedly if enemies detect the player while in dialogue. Restartable dialogues. Players can now restart conversations with the illusion in your face. Face Your Fears quest, Shatterscarp. Run Yards, the Watcher if dialogue ended prematurely. And Ranger Casagrada instill resolved after progressing past Ancient Soil. Whole bunch of combat and enemy improvements. Arrow decals have improved, especially with the XSX performance mode for the Wasteland Courier quest. Pistols now hit targets more reliably. Companions with the shock status appear no longer electrocute the player when nearby. Enemies react more reliably to arrow impacts, and ranged enemies are less confused when a player moves in and out of cover. Spells and abilities. Essence cost reductions now properly apply and no longer prevent spellcasting. Fixed cases where totem effects would stop working after conversations or cutscenes, and Into the Fray ability can now be cancelled into other actions sooner, improving combo potential. Quest and loot fixes. Fast travel is now disabled during certain animations to prevent getting stuck when quest items are consumed before progression. If old Nuna was defeated but the bounty quest didn't progress, return to the location now correctly updates the quest. If Belderano was defeated but no bounty trophy was received, players now can revisit the bounty location to find a trophy. Loot in the yellow band area no longer falls in the environment, preventing collection issues. Controls and performance. Mouse 4 or 5 buttons can now be bound to actions. Optimised elemental accumulation effects for better performance. Optimised to Baru, Sanakis, Spirit visuals to improve performance. Lots of things to do with volume also helping as well, not so much echo. And collision environmental stuff going on at the Euphasian Temple, and a few collision environmental fixes. Adjusted the Euphasian Temple collision to prevent going out of bounds. Doors at Naku Teduk now correctly unseal when reloading the save if combat was already completed, and fixed the rock collision near the strangled Ardra in Dawnshore. Wall textures in Emerald Stairs Park and Crash now render properly. Bunch of bug fixes to do with the Spore King reappearing after being killed. Unkillable Dreamfalls outside of Furborn, and Ringrim's rotating wheel would shift when the game was out of focus. Whole bunch of UI and localization fixes for Gedda's journal, no longer containing entries when playing in French. Food items are now displaying in all languages, and medical supply quest items now have the correct icon. And navigation issues. A player can no longer get stuck in the cistern after dying in combat with Yigoroth. Sliding under obstacles now works properly. The players can now properly talk to Ambassador Highguard and others if combat previously interrupted a quest-related conversation, and Starganis no longer gets stuck when walking towards the lever in a Euphasian Temple. Okay, be warned, some of this stuff's now going to have spoilers. I'll quickly try and summarise as best I can. Collision issues to do with assets have improved performance. The UI indicator on each illusory object has been improved. Character creation options now have consistent translations in Polish. Marius's offer to train a player is now more easily accessible through conversation. The Ledgers document tab no longer displays debug text on the header for lore while playing in French, and tune variables for tracking the player's influence on the voice to improve reactivity. Fort Northreach, they've cleaned up a bunch of stuff and assets and rocks. Also again, more translation stuff to do with Polish. And players being able to actually fall out of the world while doing certain parkour on rocks. Dawnshore added more ambience to a room that was missing in Dawnshore. Lots of rendering issues on Dawnshore have been added or correctly fixed, including hanging baskets, water piles and more, or book piles and more. Lots of camera improvements to do with conversations with characters in Dawnshore. No more bright light appearing in cutscenes during the quest Dawn Treader. Lots of fixes for the Euphasian Temple as well. No longer repeatable quests in the escape plan. Effectively, just a ton of fixes for places to explore in Dawnshore. And again, all to do with Polish, all being fixed. So hopefully you won't be falling through the ground or anything like that anymore. The quest Precious Light will now use correct quest markers if the player kills Captain Trevik without meeting Sapio de Falva first. And Yugolf and the rebels no longer become hostile after sparing him in an untimely end. Emerald Stairs, again, just the same kind of stuff to be honest. But a notable one is bounty targets now will actually have it completed when killing that one enemy, instead of having to kill every single person around him to complete the bounty. Also a loot list for a chest outside of Naku Teduk that would have no loot in it's been fixed. And yeah, the player's now able to talk to Ranger Casagrada as part of the quest Still Resolve if the players progress past the certain point of the quest Ancient Soil. And Death Knight armor had the wrong health value, so that should be fixed now. Shatterscarp, a bunch of SFX, camera issues have been resolved, especially when you're taking the drugs in a mission. No more looping conversation when you go and talk to someone near the ancient lake bed. And if the player made choices that lead to Chico's death, they will no longer appear and be alive during the quest The Siege of Paradis. Ray tracing improvements for Naku Kabul approach in Shatterscarp. Lots of places that you can't no longer get stuck in. Voice lines for NPCs seem to have been fixed across the board in certain places. and players can't no longer reach unintended areas near Ico's campsite, Pargrin Cache, or the Sandsea ruins. And the player can now properly receive their reward if they patiently wait for the guard who has to pee in Thirdborn. And going away to task a bunch of stuff that was preventing people from talking to a specific NPC about the outcome of the quest Keep History Alive if they've not completed it yet. There's now crowd noises to NPCs in Solace Keep, lots of lighting and fog improvements at certain places, and quest conversations won't no longer trigger inappropriately or early depending on what you've done. And the quest Boundaries of Antiquity will now properly complete if the player purified the water after killing the Weeping Willow during her initial encounter. And be warned, the Weeping Willow will now fight back when the player chooses at the end of Boundaries of Antiquity. Some big ones: companions no longer getting stuck behind closed doors in the garden. They fixed an examinable, basically endgame enemy, which can be found in the garden, and no longer getting stuck in certain places in the garden as well. Then just a whole ton of UI fixes and improvements. Full screen tutorials will now display properly during a new game, even if it had been seen in a previous save. Maris's abilities now have the correct respec cost. No more emojis during the name creation for Xbox. HUD will no longer persist when leaving or entering a party camp. Some improvements for DLSS. And then, yeah, as you would expect, ton of gameplay fixes. The Trantons, a bounty, will now correctly drop the unique loot. Companions will no longer take extra elemental accumulation while incapacitated. And their abilities now correctly scale with the tier system, so that they should become more useful. Dawnshore merchants now stock anywhere between 3 and 5 lockpicks in a time, increased from the previous 1 to 3. Godless chests can now spawn firearms again. This also allows the player to find unique firearms such as Magic Missile as their actual intended location. Young bears have had a bit of a buff resistance to the impact of power attacks from bows, making them less likely to become stunned too often. Improved performance for summon creatures that receive damage over time or disappear on death, and have lowered the stun threshold for Demagon summoners as well. Lodwyn will actually be a bit better fighting now, which won't no longer get stunned when transitioning between combat phases, and a stun meter now resets upon being healed after transitioning. Maris's Hunter sensibility will now highlight loot from defeated enemies. Players can now use any ranged weapon to aggravate Magran's Fury Stalks, the Eye of Rimgrand's Ness, Electric Carnivorous Lilies, Ivy of Forgotten Souls, and Essence Generators. This will allow wand projectiles to target in and home in on them. Players on Storytime difficulty are now twice as resistant to impact incoming attacks, making it harder to interrupt the player when they perform actions in combat. They'll also slowly regenerate up to 50% of their maximum health and essence while out of combat. And Power Slide now affects all enemies except the Mage Folk. Increase the impact of Power Slide rank 2. Some quality of life stuff to do with reloading your firearms. Reduced all aggro costs while upgrading equipment by 1. They've taken care of an exploit that allows players to skip summon character cooldowns by unequipping the item that grants the summon ability. Second Wind has no cooldown on Storytime difficulty. Some creatures have had their health bars updated to properly show, like Death's Door. Upgrading Grimoire Mastery no longer reduces the essence cost of spells cast with Grimoires. Oh boo, that sounds like a bit of a nerf. Upgrading weapons on Hard and Path of the Damned will now require more upgrade materials. Hard is going to be +1 plant materials per upgrade, +1 Ardra materials per tier upgrade. Path of the Damned is going to be 2 plant materials and 2 plant materials per tier upgrade. Wand attacks will now properly home in towards enemies standing in water. Beetle attacks have been improved, and if you change difficulty in the game, you should see that reflected in the health and essence properly being updated. If you're playing on difficulty Path of the Damned, enemies will now have a 20% bonus attack speed. Yikes. Windwalker gloves now have a cooldown preventing NPCs from getting indefinitely rooted in place by its effects. And just a ton of animation improvements as well. And a few miscellaneous stuff like fog not appearing or appearing correctly in the shantytown in Paradis. Some godlike features not clipping correctly with the models. Lots of AoE and visual effects for a lot of the elemental powers like Fan of Flames, Jolting Touch and Spirit Lance. All basically to help improve performance. So there we go. That is a big old chunky list. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about Avowed now you've completed it. Or are you getting close to it? What more have you got to do? What do you think so far? I can't wait to see what kind of improvements they make. I'd totally be down for playing a New Game Plus mode if they introduce it, and obviously checking out some other features. And who knows, maybe they'll surprise us with more than just the usual photo mode and stuff. Although, you know, that kind of stuff really should have been in the game from the start, I really feel. But hey, we're getting there. So when we get actual confirmation news about that roadmap, I'll deliver it to you guys. Until then, Check out the rest of my RPG content incoming. Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'll also be taking Oblivion. Yes, the 20-year-old game is getting a remake. I reported on that this morning, and I'll be taking a look at either the new version and maybe streaming the old one just to compare. So that's coming hopefully maybe next month as well. So yeah, along survival, I do cover RPG action games like these as well. Until next time, Ratbags, laters.